Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by guest Craig Hewitt. Craig, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do before we get started talking about the future of, or the current state of podcasting, and perhaps the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Without getting ahead of myself, my name is Craig Hewitt. I'm the founder of Castos. We are a podcast hosting and analytics provider. So if you want to have a podcast, we're the CMS of sorts, the platform that distributes it to places like Apple and Spotify, gives you analytics on who's listening, and a bunch of monetization options, which I think largely is what we'll talk about today,
Mhm.
around like private podcasting, hybrid podcasting, which we just released earlier this month. Um, yeah, ads, donations, paid subscriptions, all the stuff.
Mhm.
And we just found out that we live in the same city, which I don't
Minutes
know
from each
anyone else
other.
that
Yes,
lives here, which
that's
is
so
amazing.
weird. It's like, oh, where are you from? Providence. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
7 miles away, maybe.
right.
Cool. So, where's the best place to start? You know what I want to start really big picture. What is a podcast?
Ooh. So, for context, I think you and I first met probably about 10 years ago when I started what was then called Podcast Motor, which is a productized service for podcast editing. We still do that today.
Mhm.
But then it was just audio, right? And now it's audio
Mhm.
and video and short clips and all the social stuff and the email and all this. So we do that for about 50 customers. It's a really great service. Um, I say that just from the context of that was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Podcasting was really different then. I think the three or four things that have changed since then. First was the the popularity of video and YouTube, really conflating that question of what is a podcast.
Yeah.
Um, short video clips, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram,
Mhm.
further expanding the reach of your video content. But the question of kind of maybe not what is a podcast, but where does a podcast fit? I think is also a fair question.
Okay.
Of like, I want to be a media brand, I want to have content. Podcast is pretty instrumental in that, but is it the most important? It depends, maybe.
Mhm.
And then now, like, gosh, I've been thinking and talking about hybrid and private podcasting for a long time, but the short version is think of it like a membership site, which is
Mhm.
private podcasting. So you got a circle community or school or whatever. That's private. Hybrid is like Substack, right? Some of the stuff is free, some of the stuff is just for like paying members or free members who give you their email address. You can get
Mhm.
like early access to episodes, stuff like that. So we call them subscriber benefits. But
Mhm.
like you have all these analogies to other types of media, and we didn't even talk about like video podcasting, which is
Yeah.
amazingly a thing outside of YouTube. And it's just like I didn't answer your question just because like I mean to me it's still like audio right on Apple and
Mhm.
Spotify.
Okay. No, no, open protocol. No, not relevant.
Like RSS
Yeah.
based.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yep,
Totally not relevant or totally relevant.
totally relevant. Yeah.
Okay. How so? Let's drill in there then. If all of this video is going into Spotify and YouTube, and if Apple does it, I don't even know. How's that open protocol?
So some abide by the RSS feed and the open protocol. And just for context, folks who aren't kind of familiar with what we're talking about,
Mhm.
podcasting was invented, all air quotes, by using an RSS feed, which like everyone has on their blog. It's just a list of stuff, right, that have titles and
Mhm.
descriptions and content and publish dates,
Mhm.
and then they just attached an audio file to it, a link to a file. That's all that
Mhm.
podcasting is, and amazingly, that's all that hosts like us or Anchor or whoever are. Right, it's just a way to create a feed and then host and distribute these files. Um, Podcasting has been really interesting for content creators because you own that feed. Like you
Right.
literally, like with our WordPress integration, you can host all your own files. You can it's open source. You can host it yourself. No one's ever going to take that feed away from you. And the only other thing I know that's close to that is your email list. Like
Right.
ConvertKit or Kit might kick you out, but you can still download all those email addresses and take them over
Right.
to whoever.
Mhm.
Um, Everything else has quite a bit of platform risk.
Mhm.
And so I think the question behind the question is like, hey, how does Spotify and YouTube, who are not abiding by the open protocol and the RSS feed largely,
Hmm.
play into podcasting as an ecosystem. Uh, I'll tell you from like the industry perspective, it's very polarizing. People
Yeah.
are really against that or they're really for it because what I think I'm largely for it
Which,
for Spotify and YouTube. Mostly because I think it does more good than bad in the
hmm
discovery aspect, which is the big limitation of podcasting.
hmm
To me, the reason in a lot of ways, and for some people, YouTube as a platform is a better place to publish content is because it's easy for people to find you. Very few people find Ditching Hourly just randomly scrolling through Spotify or Apple, much less Apple.
right,
They know you, and so they listen to a podcast. Discovery is done on like a podcast level. They're going to listen to every episode that comes out. Whereas like I love watching on YouTube guys build log cabins. That's like my guilty pleasure on Saturday morning.
yeah,
And so I'll watch 3 or 4, and they all like it's the same video from a bunch of different people. It's a bunch of different people building log cabins, but they're all this guy's in Canada and this guy's in Montana and this guy's in South Carolina. Um, that concept doesn't exist in the podcasting world, where like we're going to talk about like what's the current state of podcasting. A conversation like this from another podcast won't ever get surfaced to a consumer.
so okay, I totally agree with all that. So what does so the log cabin guy in North Carolina, what is his business model? Like, because I
Mm,
think this matters. This matters because podcasting has become a very blurry term. I can remember maybe 5 or 10 years ago, my wife sitting in front of the laptop knitting with a video playing and me saying, "What's that?" "Oh, it's a podcast." I'm like, "No, it's not.
yeah,
Podcast is audio in your ears." You know what I mean? But I've given up that fight a long time ago. I think probably the definitive. It seems like every probably few years, you'd know this better than me. There's like some definitive like means podcast that goes mainstream. Maybe it's Rogan or Smartless or something. But Rogan especially, I stumbled across because of shorts, GRE clips, or whatever it was called back then. I don't watch it anymore, but back then when it was big, but it wasn't huge. And it was like these clips and then, interview with somebody really interesting. So I find the full episode and it did exactly what you're saying. But Joe
yep,
Rogan's business model is dramatically different than the business model of me or anyone listening to the show, who are probably solo software developers or other kinds of independent professionals who they have some kind of expertise and there's something, they have B2B sales process, they're selling projects so the purpose of the podcast, in my opinion, for these kinds of people, they're not selling hats, they're not selling ads, they're
yeah,
not selling, merch or whatever. Um, and they're not going to sign a deal with Spotify for 150 quadrillion dollars. So what they're trying to do is build trust with leads so that when they do have a need, the lead contacts them, they have a need, the lead already trusts them, already feels like they know them, and uh, and can close the deal more easily. So do those people really, I don't think those people, I don't think discovery is much of a big deal for that group. My experience with discovery on YouTube, just like syndicating my stuff to YouTube, is that it attracts the kind of person who might buy merch, but not the kind of person who's going to write a check for $150,000 to do a software project. Not that those
yep,
people aren't there, but that it isn't. If I only had one way to get in front of people who had that kind of buying power, it wouldn't be YouTube. So I think the business model is super important. And so I guess instead of me soapboxing, let me ask the guest a question. Um, how much does that come into consideration, if at all, when you're working with clients, let's say in podcast production, around what's the point? Like, why are they having this podcast? It's not just for fun or
yeah,
to sell, is it to sell merch or is it to build an audience to maybe someday do something?
yeah. I think it depends. Like you're saying, like for you and for me, like the whole point of having a podcast is to uh, gain trust with my audience. I'm air quoting,
Hmm.
so that they'll work with me in the future or
Hmm.
something, right? Like that's not everybody. Like I think that's one important consideration, and we see this. we see a really good example of this recently with our release of hybrid podcasting. So I mentioned hybrid podcasting, think of it like freemium.
Hmm.
I think of it like, hey, the best application of hybrid podcasting is to build your email list. Because I might say, hey, drop in your email list on this website and you'll get every episode 3 days early or ad free or
Okay,
whatever.
that's interesting. All right, so let me process that though before you go on, because I usually think of it the other way around. So
Mm,
if you are going to use your own podcast to grow your mailing list, then yeah, discovery would be super important, right? Because to me, the mailing list is the more important of the two things. They're important in different ways, but more
yep.
if I only had to have one, if I could only have one, it would be the mailing list because I can address people individually on the mailing list. I can't do that on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how I mean, is this basically Substack with audio? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yep, that's the analogy. That's the analogy to use. I don't believe they have this kind of concept of like you get the podcast early. They may. I don't really
Hmm.
know.
I
But to
don't
me,
either.
it's more discovery is like a question, but it's more like okay, there's this feature. What are you going to do with this feature? And this is where the divide comes with like they want to sell ads and they want to sell stuff, that's not the people who are excited about building their email list necessarily. It's the
Hmm.
people who want to monetize their show directly. And those folks are using, like, we have hybrid podcasting and then an integration with Apple Podcasts to have paid content right on Apple. And that's
Okay.
really, those are the two boats, right? You and I use podcasting as like trust building, long term kind of thing.
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
email kind of becomes of that, cool. And we'll go have a business, motion later on it.
Hmm.
But there are other folks that are just like, I want views and impressions and ads and we call it direct monetization.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's like there's almost nothing in between.
Yeah. So I think that's a perfect distinction. A direct monetization. I like that. So,
Yeah,
and I, in total fairness, I don't listen to as many podcasts as I used to. And I listen to way more audiobooks, interestingly enough. I don't know if there's a
same.
correlation there, but when I am doing something that would be podcast so like my podcast consumption behavior, it tends to be video. It does tend to be video, and it's the same thing. It's like the log cabins or the power washers or the, whatever it is, um, or comedy. So like when I am in that mode of like sort of like end of day, I just want to like not think about work or whatever. I want to think about I want to change what I've been thinking about. I am trapped in YouTube shorts with like stand-up comedians or something like that. And my experience of that is like there's no way in hell I'm buying something off of it's just not happening. I am so not in the mode. I mean, yes, I'll discover a new comedian. Yes, that will happen. And will I maybe go to their show? Yes, maybe. But shorts in particular are horrible for any kind of like click through or anything like that. But even when you watch and when you watch YouTube videos, again, this is just my mode of doing it. It is a little bit better because it's always like, link in the show note or what are they link in the
Hmm.
description, and you can go click through and sign up for their lead magnet or whatever it is. And then they try and sell you a course. And so would that be considered? So like I did a DIY bathroom project and I think it was summer 2023. And like my feed was 100% like how to hang a window, all that stuff, how
Yeah,
to drywall behind a shower,
yeah,
and all of those dudes had like there was like if you're in Greensboro, North Carolina, or wherever, South Carolina, you can hire us to come and do your bathroom for you because it's turning into a nightmare, isn't it? um, there was probably half of them were like that, no more than half, just seemed to be like these are kind of like trust building style videos for DIYers who are going to give up. But there were a few that were sort of like doing a course launch or whatever
yeah.
and trying to like make money online directly from the content. I, I just don't, I don't know. I'm fighting with myself in my head because on the one hand, I like the way that YouTube does do video, never mind YouTube, but video is even better at the trust building aspect than plain old audio. I think you really feel like you know the person. You feel like you had a Zoom call with them or something, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a really good thing. And the reason I haven't done as much of it as I have with podcasting is just because dealing with videos 10 times bigger pain in the butt, you know?
Yeah.
So hence companies that will do it for you and splits everything up into shorts and do all of those things. So I guess I'm the long way around is I'm a little bit I'm personally I'm torn in that divide, that polarized divide that you mentioned. Like I don't know if you went to what's that podcast conference?
Podcast movement.
Yeah, podcast
Yeah.
movement. I heard from other people that went there that was like super video, 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 and there's a bunch of people that were like, "That's not a podcast." So I'm in the middle of that divide. I could sort of be pulled one way or the other. I don't really care. I don't really care what the medium is. I don't really care if there's an open protocol or not. So
Yeah.
how should people be thinking through this? I do like, let's go back to your point about the direct monetization, because for me that nobody I work with is planning to do direct monetization. Sometimes they think they want to run ads to at least pay for the podcast
Hmm.
production.
Yep.
But to me, that's kind of small potatoes compared to the kind of money that they could bring in through a big project. So in your experience, how are people thinking about that? The kinds of people who aren't planning on direct monetization, how would a video strategy or a hybrid strategy, like, is there a model emerging for B2B solo experts that you think is the slam dunk? Like, here's how to do it, or maybe a couple of different models.
Yeah. I mean, like, I got to give credit to Jay Klaus here. Like, Jay, like, really runs creator science, like,
Hmm,
just creator economy kind of stuff.
rings a bell.
Um, he is just really savvy at seeing this whole big picture, and
Okay.
kind of what he says, and then I kind of put the pieces together. Is like, if we want to keep this piece of content we're creating, right? You want to call it a podcast, but if we were doing video, you put it on YouTube. Who knows then what it is? A video podcast on YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, it has a job. Like, we think every piece of content we have that we create as a company has a job. What's the job of that? It's to build trust with our audience. That's it. There are other jobs that need to be done, right? Namely, like awareness and discovery, top of funnel. Most people, that's social media. YouTube is a whole different thing because it's kind of everything, right? YouTube as a platform touches all of these, but top of funnel, like awareness, trust, and then conversion, typically happens on the website and email. And that's how we think about it. That's how we coach our clients talking about our production service. Is like, okay, we have all of these things that we need to do as a group that is creating content. We need awareness and discovery, which typically is social, and sharing and guest sharing and all this kind of stuff. Then we have the long form piece, hopefully, that in audio or video format. Doesn't really matter. It has the same job. And then the goal of all of that is to get people to your website. But it is never, it's almost never the other way around. Like, no one comes to your website, then discovers your podcast, then follows you on social. Um, yeah, so like, generally that's the, if you want to call it a funnel or flywheel or whatever, that's kind of how it is.
So I would say, you know, to me, the model and I'm for sure outdated on this because I don't pay that much attention to it. But here's what I would see, what I see as a model that makes sense to me and it seems to work is to send, like you said, have something that is probably short, snippety. Call it, maybe it's a short video, maybe it's an Instagram reel, maybe it's an image, a punchy image with like a post behind it on LinkedIn. But that's where a lot of people who don't know who you are exist. There's like a lot of people, a lot
Yep.
of eyeballs in those places. So it's like, hey, people, I could advertise on all these platforms, but that doesn't necessarily come across the way that it's not like a pocket knife. If I'm trying to attract people who would benefit from like high end coaching services or something, like retargeting them across the internet doesn't seem like the right move. Like
Right.
medium is the message kind of approach. So you've got, let's say you have to do, in order to increase awareness, it does make sense to me to have short, snackable, or whatever term you want to use, content on social media so that people see it, maybe see it, somebody shares it, somebody sees it 5, 10 times, 12 times, 50 times, all of a sudden they're like commenting and like, so you're sort of meeting people at this giant party. There's tons of people there, and you just like, people are coming across you. They see your T-shirt and it says something interesting, and they strike up a
Yeah.
conversation. And then there's this huge, like the possibility of getting them. What do you see as the next step? For me, the next step seems, I would generally think, to try and get them on my mailing list from there, not my podcast.
Yeah, I think this is where like the strategy goes back to like the business objectives a little bit first, like maybe kind of what you're selling, how high ticket it is. If it's
Hmm.
like maybe like I don't have anything to sell on my podcast, right? It's just it's there just to document kind of my journey. Um if I was taking it seriously, yeah, I would want people on my email list as soon as possible. So maybe I would take them from social to email and then back to the podcast.
Hmm.
That's kind of what Jay does, I think.
That's
So
how I think of it as well.
social feeds email, but then you're not going to sell on email right away. You have a nurture sequence and all this kind of stuff. But like you mentioned, people need to see your stuff so many times. So you might, you mentioned retargeting, like the algorithms, like organically retarget, right? If you watch a
Right.
bunch of log cabin videos, they're going to show you more log cabin videos, and by the same person. So I think that's why like being on a platform, and that's why YouTube, like as a podcasting guy, like I'm super bullish on YouTube. Like it's so good because like if somebody watches your stuff, they're more likely to see more of your stuff, which is
Hmm.
not necessarily the case with podcasting.
Right.
And you can get paid to create content, which I, like in podcasting you can, but like YouTube just makes it so much easier.
Mm.
Um,
You're saying
so
just because of what? Just like regular monetization?
yeah, AdSense, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Um, like my podcast being more popular doesn't it doesn't continue that flywheel of putting it in front of more people to where I get more ad volume.
I agree with that. Yeah. It doesn't, I feel like your best chance of podcast growth slash discovery is 100% word of mouth.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
That's
that's the
all
only time I listen to a new podcast is when someone says, check out this episode.
we can try to affect it with things like social and email and website and stuff. But yeah, most of the time people recommend or start listening to a podcast because it's recommended.
Hmm. Yeah.
It could be on social, but typically is in some kind of community.
Yeah. Like, so, like my brother will DM something to me or text me and say like, oh, you got to check out this, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you either get hooked or you don't.
Hmm.
Right. And then you subscribe. Right.
Yep.
You get hooked or you don't, and then you subscribe, and then you might binge listen. But as I confessed earlier, listening, like all of the modes that I'm in when I would listen to podcasts, which is like doing the dishes, walking the dogs, that sort of stuff. It's audiobooks 100% of the time. I don't listen to any podcasts.
Yeah. And are you listening to audiobooks on Spotify or Audible or
No, Google Books.
oh, interesting.
Yes,
Okay.
we're anti Amazon household. So
Right on. Yeah.
yeah. So now, do you know, am I unusual, or has audio podcasting, because I used to listen to hours a week of audio podcasts, hours, and there were audiobooks back then, good ones, so
Yeah.
is that a trend?
That's an interesting question. Because I have like my personal perspective on it. And like I think the industry would tell you probably something different. Like there, there are a ton of new podcasts that is flattened out. Um, there are definitely still more podcasts net, every month. So more being created, actively publishing than the ones that go away. Consumption also continues to go up, less by a younger demographic, and I think that's the one big question. Is like we both have teenagers. I have a sixth and eighth grader. It's interestingly they actually like listening to podcasts. They only do it on Spotify, uh, but they don't listen to audiobooks at all. Not true. My son does. My daughter doesn't at all.
Yeah, mine don't. How good is the discovery in Spotify?
Better, better than Apple or wherever. And I just say better because Apple or whatever has, what I call podcast level discoverability. I'm going to find your podcast, I'm going to find my podcast, I'm going to find whoever. Spotify's a little more episode level, like
Mhm.
YouTube would be the analogy.
Right.
But Spotify has all these detractors, right? Because they're not an open protocol. They do a bunch of things. They aren't very open with their data, all that kind of stuff. They don't kind of abide by the RSS feed in a lot of ways. But you get these benefits because they're kind of creating a better mousetrap
Right.
in some ways.
So you just hear, I mean, so I'm like an old school web hippie. I was around before the internet by a mile, and the sort of web 2.0 and all of the walled gardens, and then when the iPhone, and all the Apple App Store and all of the walled gardens, um, seemed like a bad thing for ownership,
Mm-hmm.
but it's seductive trade-off. First you could reach everybody on Facebook with a post, and then you have like 20,000 followers and you get like 2 views on a post. It's like, well, are they following me or not? All these people log off of Facebook? I don't think so. Or Instagram, or you name the platform, whatever it
Right.
is. And so you're sort of, do I care? I'm trying to decide where do I, as a business owner and not a web hippie, I think, at what point do I actually care? Because those two things are pretty well blended into my personality. Because on the one hand, I kind of don't care about an open protocol. Like I and some of my friends are going to be horrified if they hear that, but I like the idea, uh, but it has limitations. Everything has pros and cons, and on the one hand, it's like I can go to YouTube and post a video on building a log cabin or whatever, and there's potentially going to have, maybe I'll end up with 100,000 subscribers at the end of the year. There's no way that would have happened if I just launched some podcast, unless I went on some other media, unless I went on TV, pretty much, if
Yeah.
that would even do it anymore. So so on the one hand, you say, like, you hear people crying about getting demonetized on YouTube or getting kicked off of a platform, and like, now I don't have any access to my millions of users. So, well, you never had access to them. You never would have had them if it wasn't for the platform in the first place. So if I'm arguing for the pro platform side, the odds of you having those people that you just lost when you got deplatformed, you never would have had them in the first place.
Right. Right.
Uh, but in the meantime, like, shame on them for not getting email addresses from everyone. you know?
This is it. This is it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it comes down to two things here. One is you have owned and rented audiences, which is exactly what we're talking about. Even a podcast, to an extent, if you're considering like platform discoverability, is a rented audience. Yeah, you can own your RSS feed entirely, but it being listed in Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where new people will find you, is a platform risk.
Hmm.
Email is the only thing that's entirely yours, and people being customers. So I think that's it. I think the other question of like, maybe kind of like open platform or not, to me, like, I don't know. I'm the same way. Don't really care. To me, it's more like you said the message is the medium. Like, is podcasting the right channel for you? I think is the question. And for I went to an Alex Hormozy event a few weeks ago,
Oh,
and
really?
so like him or don't like him, he's a smart dude. Like,
Yeah, he
he's a
is
smart
smart.
dude and very successful. Uh, I was asking them about podcasts, and they're like, it's super important to us. They're enormous content creators. He puts out like 600 pieces of content a week. They said the YouTube is the most important, Instagram is next, and podcasting is close because it builds trust. So he's got the top of funnel figured out, but people need to consume enough of his content to have them buy their companies or come to his thousands of dollar day training or whatever it is.
Hmm.
That, like you said, that can only happen after you binge a ton of content. And so I think it's like, what's the business you're running? How many impressions do you need to get with a person before they take some kind of action?
Yeah.
And then like the it might be that podcasting is your best bet there, just because you have to have so many hours of exposure to a person.
Hmm.
I mean, I love my log cabin dudes, but only one of them has gotten hours of my time. The rest is just a bit here and a bit there, and I don't ever
Yep.
subscribe to anybody.
Same with me, right? So like all of my weird like hobby, it's not a hobby even. I'm not
Yeah,
building a log
interest.
cabin.
Yeah.
It's just like zone out. It's like right. There's like one that I end up gravitating to either because of some philosophy or just their personality or whatever it is. It's not, all different stuff. Um, but so back to the Hormozy thing, in that context, when he said podcast, what did he mean? Long form audio, possibly
Yep.
video content.
Yep.
You mean so when people say podcast now, they mean long form?
Yeah. Long
Okay.
form audio is when I say podcast. Yeah.
Okay, long form audio. I agree because I hear this very similar thing. Traditional podcasting is good for binging. It's a perfect format if you want to binge on a particular show, not maybe a content area. If
Hmm.
you want to hear everything about log cabin construction, or whatever, that's a bad example, but everything about, I don't know, SEO in 2025, you're not gonna get, there's probably not a good way to find a mixed feed, like a playlist of episodes on that
Yeah.
subject from a bunch of different people.
Yep.
But it's great for if you find someone who you click with, you're kind of like, yeah, this is my log cabin guy. Then it's really easy with traditional podcast players to just like boom 300 episodes and just like get in the car and put it on.
Right.
So if for folks who are building an authority-based business, which is basically everyone I work with, then having that asset, that like sort of long form, even if it's 10 episodes, I've done like, an hour long, 10-hour long episodes. Like I do limited run podcasts sometimes on a particular subject, and I'll interview a bunch of guests about that one thing, and they just go on that show, and that's that.
Hmm.
And in 10 hours, that's like a full audiobook, or average I think is about 10 hours. But if you've got a podcast with like 300 episodes on it, people can just put that on, and they're just like, your voice is like in their
Yeah.
ears for weeks,
Yeah.
right? So like, how does that differentiate you from like the next person who they just heard of? It's huge. So if we think, I'm just kind of unpacking this for myself and to the same extent for the listeners, it's like I think audio it's just so much easier to create audio than video. I mean, like an order of magnitude easier. The files are
Yeah.
smaller. You don't have to worry about the background, your hair, your makeup, your outfit, whatever. You can, and maybe I shouldn't care about those things in video either, but that's not the ones I see succeeding have pretty good lighting.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, it's a lot to worry about. And even if you don't care about that stuff, processing the videos, adding bumpers, if you're going to do that, uploading it, you basically need to hire people, right? As you well know.
Yep.
So that is like most of the people that are listening to this are soloists. So that is a lot to ask. But if what we're really trying to do is create a long form digital asset that people can binge listen to build authority and trust with your ideal buyers, audio podcast still to me is the winner. The question is really, and then I see the question is how to get people to hear about it in the first place. And that's social, YouTube, whatever, these other places. And then if you call that a podcast, I mean, people I talk to, they call that a podcast. It's like, here's a good question to kind of unpack this, because they think of the whole thing as their podcast, but I don't really see it that way. I don't think the
Mm.
way I'm describing isn't that way. The way I'm thinking of it, and the way I have thought about both LinkedIn and YouTube, which are the only two platforms I've used with any consistency in the past 5 years. Uh, if you think about YouTube, let's just pick that one purely as discovery, you wouldn't publish the long form episodes there. You could, but you wouldn't need to. You
Yeah.
could just pick like highlights, 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 highlights. But what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty deep topic. I mean, um, the best thing to do, what I would do, is you have shorts. So shorts are now on YouTube under 3 minutes, vertical, like
Oh,
Instagram style, right? So they went from 1 minute to 3 minutes a couple months ago.
okay. Yeah, I didn't
Um,
hear that.
yep, so short, right? The whole purpose there is just visibility, discoverability, brand. Um, you mentioned Joe Rogan. We call them segments. These are 3 to 10 minute bits, right? So you would imagine like a question, like you and I, if you've asked me 4 or 5 questions, each of those would be a segment, and they have a very specific goal, which is just like showing up in search or browse, right? And like that's a big differentiation in YouTube is like, am I going to search for this thing to find it, or is it going to be suggested? But optimized for that one thing that we're talking about. And then like honestly, sometimes the question is long form because like the people that would watch either of those probably aren't going to watch for an hour and a half.
Okay, wait a second. So say that again. So the
Yeah, so
people,
you have shorts up to 3 minutes.
yeah,
That's my kids and probably yours too, just going like this on the
yeah,
couch
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
hours, right? It's just
Yes,
like, oh
yes.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Segments, which, let's call it 5 minutes, is like,
Hmm.
oh, I want to hear about this thing. I'm on the couch. If it's like 9:30, I'm like, I got to go to bed soon. I can't watch an hour long video,
Yep.
but I can watch a 5 minute video.
Hmm.
Uh, and then this is all from the same piece of content. If I take the entire hour long episode and put it on the same channel, especially,
Hmm.
am I asking YouTube to put my same piece of content in front of three different people who want to consume content in three different ways? Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
pretty tough.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough. And this is why, like, we coach most of our clients to put if they have a podcast under a brand, to
Uh,
put it on a separate channel.
okay. That's the long form stuff. Yeah.
Because like we have podcasts at Castos, but we also have a bunch of how-to videos and podcast success stuff that are all like 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Like a 10-minute watching how-to person is not the same as a 45-minute two
Right.
dudes talking about business.
Yeah. So it ends up confusing YouTube.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that and not to keep coming back to it, but like Rogan's Clips channel, I don't even know if it was him that had the Clips channel. It could have been. It could have been
yeah, I
someone
don't.
else. But that's
Right,
how I heard of Joe Rogan was like these short, and they were segments, like you're saying. It wasn't shorts. It was before shorts.
right,
It was
right.
like these 10 to 15 minute segments with like a really smart person, and it was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. Oh my god, there's a 4 hour conversation of this whole thing, and it's this other channel, and it was a pain in the butt to find it too. It wasn't like you could link right to it, or they
Hmm.
didn't link to it. It was weird.
Yeah, I mean, as of like very recently, YouTube has started kind of marrying the two. So the shorts feed feeds the long algorithm. So
Hmm.
there's some, and this is why I mean, like all this stuff changes
Yeah.
so fast and so much. But now, like the prevailing wisdom would be like, yeah, you should have everything on the same channel, but only as of very recently because those two things talk. Previously, it was just like the shorts are for the kids and people who just like mindlessly want to scroll. The long is for folks who want to go super deep on something. Turns out YouTube now thinks those can be the same people who, whatever, have different viewing behaviors at different times, which is pretty complicated, I think.
I agree. It's like the other thing it's like I have YouTube Premium, which means that I think a feature of that is that you can close your phone and the audio still plays, but that's not normally how it works. So when I'm in a watching mode, it's a completely different like part of my day and mental space that I'm in when I'm in potentially in listening mode.
Yeah.
So I probably in audio mode, I probably don't have hands free. So I'm either driving or, doing the dishes or something with my hands, working in the garage. But I'm not watching YouTube while I'm building a trellis for the garden. I might listen to an audiobook or maybe a podcast, but I want it to be long form in that situation because I don't want to have to keep nexting or jumping
Yeah.
around or whatever,
Yeah.
because I don't want to keep pulling my phone out. And if I'm going to sit down and watch a 2 hour podcast episode, it's like, well, now you're up against Game of Thrones and
Hmm.
like and like, wow, I'm not watching whatever Diary of a CEO when the Andor finale is on. it's
Yeah.
not gonna, if I'm choosing between those two things, it's like how much watch time do I really have? So I guess what I'm saying is for the longer form stuff, I mean, I don't suppose it hurts to have it on your YouTube channel. Maybe you're saying now it doesn't, but that wouldn't be my priority. Like right now, my podcast platform just pushes full episodes with cover art to YouTube. It's useless. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's for people. There's nothing to watch. It's just a still image. And even audiograms don't seem to do anything really. Some of them are okay, but you want video in the background still. You're like, if you're on YouTube, you're in viewing eyeball mode, I think. And if the thing doesn't attract your eyeball, like even my wife, just boop, 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 boop. It's amazing
Yeah.
how fast they'll
Yeah.
skip a video without even not 1 second of it playing. Just that, which means they must be looking at the visuals. So if you have no visuals and it's just really an audio thing that you put on YouTube, do you think that is, I suppose it's better than nothing and it's no effort, but I don't think it's the right use. It's not platform native.
Yeah, I mean, we have a similar feature. We call it YouTube republishing. We take your audio, convert it to video, publish it to YouTube with a static image.
Right.
That's kind of the extent of what we can do with audio. I guess now we could probably do some pretty cool stuff with AI, but we're just not there yet. Um,
That could be a big that that could be a big deal
yeah,
because I see a lot of these videos that are obviously AI generated visuals over like a speech that Alan Watts did in the 60s.
right.
And it doesn't look like someone put it together. It looks like an AI sort of cobbled together some stock stuff or
Hmm.
created it.
Yeah,
But I'll still watch it, even
yeah,
though it's not great because the audio is great and the video keeps my eye there. It's weird.
yeah, yeah. It. I don't know. It's it's an interesting. I guess I just keep coming back to like, what's the goal of the piece of content and how do we optimize what we're doing for that goal? And for
Yeah.
me, if you're talking about audio long form podcasting, the goal is trust.
Yep.
And I guess this is it. I sacrifice the rest of it to optimize for that. So I sacrifice amazing video or a 4-hour episode or super high quality video production or something because like yeah, my time and energy and dollars are going into having the best conversations I can have to gain trust of my audience. And that's not the goal for everybody, right? So it might just
Hmm.
be like, hey, go hog wild on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts or
Right.
or none of them, right? LinkedIn, God, like that's all fine, but like, yeah, podcasting is not for everyone. Like, I saw, gosh, who did I see this from? Like a very successful creator.
In what
It
any
was
space?
Adam Robinson,
Okay. Not familiar.
LinkedIn guy.
Okay.
Quite successful. And basically, the short version was like, it's really hard. Like podcasting to grow a really big audience is really hard, way harder than LinkedIn, way harder than YouTube. But what they said kind of echoed Hormozy is like a podcast listener is more valuable than all the rest of those
Exactly. Yeah. That's
by
I
a
almost
lot.
I almost got you off and said that.
Yeah.
It's so true. So okay. So I feel like we're coming to an agreement that you've got the actual experience. I just have the anecdotal experience of myself and a couple of podcasts. But if the goal, I love that question. What is the goal of this piece of content? And if you are in the expertise based space, I think it is no matter what you end up doing, the better you are at speaking, the better your life is going to be. So like whether that's conferences or Zoom calls or webinars or podcasting, I think podcasting is the best bang for the buck speaking engagement that you can do, whether it's guesting or hosting. And the goal of that piece of content is for people to connect with you and trust you that you're good at this thing, that you can help them with this transformation that they're looking for. Like you're the guy or gal that they trust for this. So
Yeah.
Rolodex moment to deep positioning, deep positioning. How do you drive people to that? Is it totally separate? It's to me, it's like I know all of this stuff gets conflated. It's getting less conflated in my mind through this conversation right now, where the purpose of like when I think back to different platforms that I've goofed around with, like I used to be a big Twitter guy years and years ago, and then YouTube, then LinkedIn, and I don't love doing video. but YouTube's my favorite of those.
Mm,
I think it's so, but if I just think of it, I don't think I thought of it as clearly as purely a discovery platform. It's like ads. It's like I could buy ads and do the same thing, but I don't think that that's not the message I want to send. I don't want to send an advertising message, probably. Maybe
yeah.
if I launch a new book or something, then okay, I'll run some ads, but to be perceived, and this is me advising the audience too, to be perceived as an authority in this particular whatever space you're in, then probably ads is not the way to go. And sharing your expertise for free in a way that is just like really like pops insights. Like people are like, whoa, I never would have thought of it like that. Like, oh, that's immediately obvious that that's true, but I never would have thought of that. And then, but then getting them from YouTube to, and then to me, it would be like lead, get them on the mailing list, you know, value pricing boot camp. Like, oh, you're interested in value based pricing for, services, go check this thing out, free email course. And
Yeah.
then they'll hear about podcast episodes that they can then potentially binge listen to. And like, man, this guy, he does know this stuff. Like, this is really resonating with me.
Yeah. To me, the best funnel that I've seen, or funnel, it's a negative connotation. The best setup I've seen around this is organic social. Pick your platform. There's a best platform for your ICP.
Yep.
Uh, Boost content from there. LinkedIn has thought leader ads. Instagram has just you boost a post just to get an organic piece of content in front of more people that has some kind of thing like, hey, check out my link in bio, or here, comment this thing to get a free thing, and you get on my email list.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the email list. Then you get to the trust. You get come back to the trust, I guess, with the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and then you sell folks concurrently, I guess, with email and podcast from there.
Yeah.
But
To me, they go hand in hand. It's like
yeah,
the email list is fantastic for crystallizing your thinking, your IP, understanding how to teach what it is that you know from doing in practice,
yeah,
converting it from practice to theory, learning how to communicate it, really boiling your ideas down. Which is why it always blows my mind when people are like, "How can I get AI to write my newsletter for me?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's to help you think better.
yeah,
So having AI do it is the wrong way around." Um, and then it's like both things, writing and speaking. There's basically three. To me, there's three core skills of any business owner, but especially for people like I'm talking, like me or like I'm talking to. It's speaking, writing, and negotiating. Those three business skills, like no matter where you get practice at those, you will never regret it. So you might as well be doing them all three as much as possible.
yeah.
So I think if nothing has changed my mind about this, and I've been saying it for at least 10 years, which is like having a podcast and writing a newsletter is like killer for authority based businesses. But you're not going to see huge numbers. You're probably not going to, if you have 10,000 people on a mailing list, that's a lot for that kind of a business. If you
Hmm.
have 1,000 podcast listeners, that's a big room full of people. If 1,000 people are listening to you talk every week, and you've got you've got your ICP in that audience, that's a big room of, people who might
Yeah.
need what you sell. So,
The one I agree with all that. I agree with all that. The one cherry on top, or maybe it's aspirational for some folks, is writing a
mhm.
book.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
I think this is probably the thing that sets a lot of folks apart in that degree of respectability or trust is like if you've like you said taken the time to think about your topic long enough to write a book on it, I trust you.
Hmm. Yeah.
If it's got a bunch of good reviews on Amazon, I trust you even more. Um, but I think that probably is the place that most folks that listen to this show want to get to is like, I am so the man or the woman uh, that I can write a book about this. Like that, there's some audaciousness to that
Yep.
in a good way.
Yes.
Um, and that's probably if I had to think of all the people I really respect in kind of their field, like they've all written a book.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's for sure. So, a lot of people who I work with either have written a book or could write a book,
Yeah.
and maybe that's probably half of the people that maybe that's overestimating it. then there's a whole bunch of people who are good at what they do, but for whatever reason, the book is not the next step. So, and that's, of course, it's like not everyone's ready to write a book at every time. So, for sure. But yes,
But they could.
absolutely.
No, they have
At some
the
point, they
depth of
probably
knowledge.
should. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. In the meantime, you can, I found that, I write every day. So it's like, that's great. For in terms of like being able to write a book, I have so much content. It's like I could almost just curate it into a book at this point. But yeah, so I think podcasting and writing every day is a great 1-2 punch. And then it sounds like pick your platform. That's your discovery platform, and just try super hard to convert people from there to one or the other. I think I'd rather go for mailing list, but one or the other.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
What do you think? I don't know how much time you have. I know we probably have to wrap up soon. Um,
Yeah, I'm good.
okay, so if it's possible to predict this, where do you see the air quotes podcast or podcasting going in the next, let's just say, 2 years?
Um, Nowhere, in a good way, in a very good way, because there's a lot of people who are just going to get destroyed in the next 2 years. I'm talking about AI mostly.
Hmm.
Like just for context, I'm a huge AI. I'm a maximalist, right? Like a Bitcoin
Uh-huh.
maximalist.
Yeah.
We use it. I use it all the time for everything. I implore our team. I told one of our team members the other day, if you're not actively using AI and trying to use it more, you're delinquent in your job. And I believe, I mean, you've seen all the stuff from the Fiverr CEO and all, like it's going to revolutionize everything, and maybe in a really bad way. Um, Podcasting will be an outlet for people to get away from that, to know that Jonathan and Craig are having a real conversation, and this is two people, not an AI, talking about a thing. And in
Hmm.
that respect, I am super grateful. Well, if that is true, that's what I
Hmm.
think. If that's actually true, I'm super grateful that I'm in a relatively AI resistant business. Because I mean, like, I talked to my accountant and I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it's very possible he just won't have a job. Like, and his whole firm will go under in 12 months. Um, Probably
Hmm.
not, but surely half the team could be gone. I
Well,
don't
that
see that happening to podcasting. And so when I say nothing in a good way, I think it will be a haven for people that want genuine, authentic, real content.
yeah, I agree with that. And you want to hear a funny story? When I started hearing the 11 Labs synthetic voices and stuff come out, and Descript has it built in that it's got 10,000 hours of me, or not that many, but it has thousands of hours of me talking already. It's like I can just type what I should have said, and you can't tell. But people sending me Notebook LM audio, and which I'm sure you've heard. And when all of that started coming out, I started editing. I do my own editing. I like doing it. Even though I'm a past podcast motor customer
Yeah,
with Business
yeah,
of Authority, it was always great. Um, but I edit it myself. Uh, and I found once the AI stuff started to come out and like really people were really using it, I edit less now because it sounds realer.
yeah,
Yeah. So like
yeah,
when the screw ups and garbage truck going by in the background, and I tend to leave that stuff in more because, and this is just my gut instinct, it makes it feel more like you're sitting in the room with the two people than it's some like radio broadcast or something like that.
yeah,
So I don't know if that'll end up being true, if that's the right approach, but I totally agree with what you said, which is that it's a very human thing, and I don't think anyone's going to listen to two AIs talking to each other. It doesn't sound
yeah,
interesting whatsoever.
yeah. I was on a call with a YouTube consultant that like works with Tony Robbins and like that kind of level.
Mm,
And they said, scripting videos is completely out now. It's
mm.
just a couple bullet points, talk to the camera. And if you mess up and you say and all that, it's good.
Yeah, that's good because
And
that's how I usually do it.
yeah, I hear you. You got the dog barking and crying
Yeah.
outside here, and I hope everybody appreciates that we're real humans. Yeah, like I think it's a all these things are pendulums, and we have seasons for super high polished and retention editing and all this kind of stuff. We're in a
Mm,
season of genuine content and connection. I just think it's going to be even more over the next few years.
So what you're saying is podcasting is entering its punk phase.
It might be. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, we can cut this out if you don't want to do it, but um, can you tell me more about some of the feature related things that you mentioned earlier in the show? Is there something I would just as a service to the listener to know what things are coming out that are maybe unusual, different, novel, just new ways. Like, what should people be playing with? Like private, you mentioned private podcasting, like
Yeah.
freemium model and stuff.
Yeah. So if you don't have a podcast, like all this applies. If you do have a podcast and you're on Simplecast or Transistor or something like that, to be honest, I don't know. Like, I don't know what they have. I'll just share like what we have. So private podcasting at Castos at least has been around for like 5 years, and the concept here is individuals can get access to a private feed that they then enter onto their phone in like the Apple Podcast mobile app or Overcast or Pocket Cast or not Spotify. Back to the open and closed
Hmm.
platform
Hmm.
concept. This is like a membership site, right? This is just like Circle. You have a one-to-one relationship with somebody. You can determine, Bob gets this content or he doesn't. I like this um, in conjunction with some other thing. Usually it's like they bought my course or they're a client or
I see.
companies are doing this a lot, internal communications. I don't like this as a standalone thing. It's just way too much work is the reality. Unless you're a team with a whole bunch of people and you can create, twice as much content,
Yeah.
then that's cool. But that's not me. Um, where I really like hybrid podcasting, and hybrid podcasting is kind of it's a marry between public and private, where you can have entirely public content. You can have private content that's only for those private subscribers. So if someone gave you their email address and we have an integration with Kits and a bunch of other platforms, Zapier, and you pipe that over to us and that person gets that private feed. That private feed is good for public content. It's also good for some private content. So you can go in a podcast and say, hey, this episode with Craig was a banger. I'm only going to release this to my private audience. That's cool. Or you could have
Hmm.
across the board what we call subscriber benefits, which are like, I'm going to release episodes 3 days early to my private subscribers, or I'm going to
Hmm.
restrict access to my back catalog of content only to private subscribers.
Yes, I've seen that
Or if
before
I'm
too.
monetizing with like our dynamic ads, I'm going to bypass that for private subscribers. So it's really like those four things. Um, and what's so interesting is like everyone who listens to this show would use it for the I want to build or nurture my list. So hey,
Right.
if you're on my list, you're automatically a private subscriber. You get all these benefits. You can also build your list this way for new people who find you. Hey, you're not on the list yet. If you join, you get access to all this cool stuff. Um, and then like the other part of the podcasting world will use it to in our integration with Apple to just get paid. Use the same mechanism and then just pipes all that stuff to Apple. People, you set a monthly price, it's $3 or whatever, and they get paid. So it's the same model of like I got something going on that I want to attach the podcast to, but it's just Apple. Apple's the other thing. It's all the payments, it's the know your customer, it's all the stuff. Um, so that I mean that's the thing I'm most excited about. Of course, we're doing like a lot of AI repurposing right now, and we'll be rolling that in the next couple months. Um, yeah, and I think that like I think the big thing is just like knowing what our customers want is the biggest thing, and that is a way to gain trust with our audience. And so like we're just trying to optimize kind of everything towards that.
Killer. That's a
Yeah.
great place to leave it. That was good. Cool. Thanks so much for coming on, Craig.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
So, where should people go to find out more about all these features you're talking about, or if they wanted to reach out, ask you more questions, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so castos.com, castos.com is the best place. You can hit me up on LinkedIn is probably the best place overall. Just search for Craig Hewitt.
Great. Awesome. Thanks again. All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.